It's time to join your voice and get down to business with some critical thought. And now, here's your host, Lady C.
Hi, this is Lady C. Welcome to another episode of The Critical Thought. In the upcoming episode, I'll be talking with Pat, and she'll be talking about her own personal experiences and how she left the Watchtower. And Pat is going to be giving you some tips on what you can do before you leave, because this is all based on her own personal experience. So thanks so much for being on the program, Pat. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lady C. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate you letting me do this.
Yes. And before we get started, I would like for Pat to talk about her upcoming meetup.
Sure, absolutely. So we are having a meetup. It's an event in New York City. It will be held on Saturday, March 31st. It will begin at 6 p.m. I'm asking that anyone who's interested in attending to either email me or to please call me. My cell phone number is 646-628-4153. My email address is P as in Peter, A as in Apple, T as in Tom, L as in Larry, Y as in yellow, N as in Nancy, N as in Nancy again, w@aol.com. So please email me or call me and I will give you the information. We're just trying to make sure that we reach out to ex-Jehovah's Witnesses first before other ex-cult members join us. So that's the reason we want to screen the audience. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that information, Pat. And I'll also put it in the podcast notes so that people can get that information as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
All right. Well, Pat left the organization back in 1995.
Long time ago.
It was like, she said, Pat was like, enough is enough and too much is foolish.
Yeah.
And she had to roll up out of here. But it wasn't until like March of 2017 that she actually woke up to the truth about the truth. And so she wants to tell a little bit about herself before she gets started with her tips on how you can fade and keep your dignity and all that kind of stuff. But Pat, go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Right, so I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness from the age of 6 years old. My mother was pretty strict about it, so she didn't allow us to have any contact with any non-believing relatives. My classmates who weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, I wasn't allowed contact with them, so she was pretty strict about it. All of my friends were in the Kingdom Hall. It was either the Kingdom Hall or nothing. So I spent 22 years as a Jehovah's Witness. So all my teenage years, all the way, I left at the age of 28. So when I left, it was in 1995, and I kind of just said, listen, I've had enough of this. I wrote a disassociation letter, and I left. I left abruptly. And so now looking back on it all these years later, I wish I had done things differently. I think that had I did some planning before I left, then things might have gone a lot smoother once I was out. So that's why I wanted to do the show today. I wanted to share some things that I learned with your audience.
Okay, so now we had talked about this offline, and you had mentioned that you disassociated yourself.
Yes, I did.
And I asked you if you had it to do all over again, would you go down that route again?
I absolutely would, but the only difference is I would have planned it. The neighborhood that I live in is where I was living at the time. It's a very urban neighborhood, meaning, there's a Jehovah's Witness on just about every block. So and they are the type that will snitch on you if they see you doing anything that, you shouldn't be doing as a witness. So for me, because I was going to be living in that same neighborhood, it just made more sense for me personally to just disassociate myself. I didn't want the elders coming by my house. I didn't want, I just wanted to be left alone. So that once you write that letter, you get peace. No calls, no nothing. The only person that would check up on me, I have a brother who is an elder, and so once a year he would call me, find out if I was interested in coming back. I'd tell him no. End of conversation. So only for the if you don't want to be completely constantly hassled by them, that's a good way to do it. But again, it was only because I was in the same neighborhood. Had I been moving somewhere to a new neighborhood, somewhere where no one knew me, I probably wouldn't have wrote that letter. I just would have just faded out and just disappeared into the sunset.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of good information for people to have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
okay.
one point that I did want to share with people, especially those who are still physically in, mentally out, and they're thinking about leaving the organization, the first thing that they should consider, and every family is different. Some families will shun you, they won't speak to you, won't call you, nothing. There are other families that kind of bend the rules and they will stay in contact with you. Shunning is very brutal. It's very hard to get accustomed to. And if you're like me, that was raised in the organization, and you don't have any outside friends and you don't have relatives that you can, be in contact with, it's going to feel like you're isolated, like you're going to feel like a stranger in a strange land. So my first piece of advice to anyone who's thinking about leaving is to start making friends outside of the organization immediately, whether it's neighbors, whether workmates, classmates, whoever. You don't want to feel isolated. You don't want to feel cut off from everybody. What happens is if you stay in isolation, you'll just start feeling sorry for yourself. You get depressed. Nothing good comes from it. So the first thing you want to do is try to get a circle of friends. You want to start building up new relationships. It's going to feel strange at first. It's going to feel a little bit weird, but you need to overcome it. And then that way you still feel connected. You feel like a human being, part of a society. Whereas if you just stay isolated and cut off from everyone, you start to feel ashamed. You feel guilty. You just feel all these different negative emotions. You feel sad that you lost all your friends. So the first thing to do is to immediately start replacing those friends you're going to lose.
Okay, so that's what I hear. So what I hear you saying is to make sure that you don't just leave abruptly, that you try to make friends and avoid isolation.
Exactly. You really do. And the other reason that's important is because when life's problems do crop up, you're going to want someone you can talk to. You're going to want someone you can vent to, not so much that you need them to come solve all your problems, but just talking releases a lot of frustration. It helps you think matters through. So you want someone you can talk to and bounce ideas off of and brainstorm with. So it's extremely important that you fill that void immediately.
Okay. And one of the other things that you did, because you did this yourself, correct?
Well, I tell you, it took a long time for me to get there. When I first left, I was bitter. I was so angry that I had wasted all those years in the organization. And that's another thing. When you leave, some people feel angry, some people are sad and depressed. So emotions, the longer you are in, the more it's going to hurt when you leave. So what I found is that therapy will help. You want to keep yourself busy. You want to find ways to occupy your mental capacities, meaning college or learning a new skill, learning a different language, learning how to dance. I mean, anything. You just want to stay busy. You want to keep your brain occupied, and you just want to, the time that you would have used going to meetings or out in field service, you want to replace it with healthy, productive things.
Now did you mention something about therapy?
Yeah, therapy I strongly recommend it. I know I know that in some cultures, mental health is considered like taboo, or they really don't, want to go into therapy, but it helps. Leaving a cult is a very traumatic experience. And so you really need someone to help you process all of that. And so, I talked briefly with a therapist, and she just gave me bullet points. Just do this, do that, and it helped. It really helped me figure out how it helped me get my footing. And I felt much better after I talked with her, because then I realized, listen, this is not just me who's experiencing all this frustration. It's plenty of other ex-members that go through this.
How long after you left the organization did you consult a therapist?
It was pretty immediately, but yeah, it was pretty immediately. And I'm glad that I did, because it helped me put it in the past. And I mean, I'm not, happy about my time in the cult or anything, but it did let me move forward. So that part of me is still there. That I still remember being a Jehovah's Witness, going out in field service and all of this. But it doesn't make me sad or angry or depressed anymore. And now it's just a chapter of my life that's just closed.
Okay. How long did you consult the therapist? Did you?
It was very brief. It was very brief. Like I said, she just gave me all these different things to work on, things to think about. The main point she told me is with my time. Just if you stay busy, she told me try to keep yourself occupied so you're not dwelling on it. So that it was good advice. All the stuff she gave me to do was good advice, and that's basically. And she really helped me a lot. It helped me a lot. So I will say I was upset, and I've heard others say this. It takes about 2-3 years just for the emotions to settle down. But like I said, the longer you were in, the more it's going to hurt when you come out. So for me, it took about 3 years before the anger subsided. It just took time. And keep in mind, my family was still in there. So I was cut off from my mom. I was cut off from my siblings. They were right there in the same neighborhood, and I couldn't speak to any of them.
Now, you mentioned offline that you had an interesting experience at one of the conventions when you were 10 years old. You want to share that with our listening audience?
Absolutely, absolutely. So one day, my family and I, we were leaving a district convention. There was an apostate standing, handing out flyers, and he was screaming at the top of his voice, "Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult. You're nothing but a cult. You're a bunch of fanatics." And he just kept screaming it and screaming it. And my mom was like, "Let's go. Let's just ignore him. We're going to go. It's time to leave. Let's go." And she, in her mind, she thought we would just, forget about it. But I never forgot that man's words. So even years later, when I left the organization, I was always curious, was that man right? Are Jehovah's Witnesses a cult? And only after I had already left was I ready to find the answer to that.
So what did you do? Remember, what did you do when you left and you found out?
I was in college, and I did some research on cults and saw the characteristics of a cult. And so that's how I knew Jehovah's Witnesses matched some of those characteristics listed, not each and every single one, but a lot of them. And so that's how I got the answer. But the thing about it was, how you know something and you say, if I tell somebody else, they're not going to believe me. It was one of those kind of feelings. I said, they're going to say, no, they have the truth, they have the Bible, this and that. Every time you talk to a Jehovah's Witness, the first thing they do is pull out the Bible. They show you 2 scriptures, a watchtower, and a song, and they have every answer under the sun. And so I said, nobody's going to believe this. But then what I found as time went on is that more and more of my friends had been leaving. And so then I said, you know what, they may now be acceptable to the idea that Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult. So I wouldn't recommend just springing it on someone, oh, let me show you what I just learned. I went to college and they told me blah, blah, blah. But if you give them time and they start to see things, then you got your foot halfway in the door, because their brain is already meeting you there. So that's one thing I always try to look for, is the person even open to the idea that this may be a cult. But I'm so glad that apostate planted that idea in my head, because I never forgot his words.
So you're feeling like they did some good for you then? Yeah.
And I really feel that, growing up, I never questioned it. My mom said, let's go to the Kingdom Hall, I went. Let's go out and field service, we go. Time to go to the district convention, we go. I just went along with the program. I figured she knew all the answers. She already knew this was, everything was legitimate. Let's go. So I never questioned anything. So to do that for the first time, it was really refreshing. It really showed me that I need to ask more questions and not be so trusting and so agreeable.
So what was the circumstances surrounding you leaving?
Well, what was happening in the congregation where I was at was I just kept getting into all these little petty scrapes with sisters, and I like this brother, and and all of this. I had a sister rolling her eyes at me, you say hello or whatever. She'd embarrass me in front of her and rolling her eyes and sucking her teeth at me and everything. So I reached a place where I said, well, I'm just not going to speak with her. And so, the elders pulled me aside, and they showed me the scripture. If you bring in your gift to the altar and you remember that your brother has something against you, you leave your gift at the altar and you go make peace. So, Pat, that means it's your job to go make peace. And I'm telling you, Lady C, that was, I was done. I'm like, you know what? this is not going to work out. I mean, the other thing people should know about me is that I loved politics. From the time I was about 15, I loved politics. I mean, and I used to call, and I called politics my spectator sport for that reason. I couldn't participate, I couldn't vote, but I loved watching the news just so I could see the political news that was going on. So I'm over here making, I felt like, man, I can't do the things I really want to do so I can be a Jehovah's Witness. And now on top of that, I have to go and be peacemaker. I was like, no way, this is not going to work. So I said, I'd rather just leave, be much happier. I don't have to get into these little petty fights with people. And, I wanted to enjoy life. I couldn't imagine living in eternity with that kind of backbiting and pettiness. And I just didn't want to do it. I wasn't content. I just didn't see it as working out for me.
And not only that, when you think about the politics that go on in the Kingdom Hall,
yeah,
there's bigger politics that you're involved in, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what other things would you recommend for people to do prior to leaving?
Prior to leaving, I also recommend that they give themselves a game plan, meaning if you don't have a sufficient way to earn a living, do you need to go back to school? Do you need to take a second job? But you need to really plan it so that you're not relying upon family members, because they may or may not come through for you. We all saw that video clip from the district convention where they showed that woman, her daughter was calling her and she refused to pick up the phone. So that does happen. So we, as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, we need to be prepared for that. We need to try to be as self-sufficient as possible. That includes even in emergencies. We need to have a plan A and a plan B for any type of emergency, whether it be medical, whether it be loss of job, whatever it is. We need to always be thinking ahead, because if we wait until we are already experiencing an emergency to start trying to make a plan of what to do, we're going to feel overwhelmed. Whereas if you already have ideas in mind, it kind of makes it a lot easier when you're in the emergency. You're not as stressful.
What would you tell people that are working for Jehovah's Witnesses and they currently are like renting maybe a room or apartment from another Jehovah's Witness?
I recommend not saying anything to that person. If you're living there in the same home with them or whatever, you're renting from them, I wouldn't recommend saying anything to that person. If you don't intend to live a lifestyle that's going to be, where the elders are trying to, get in touch with you and call you and doing all this stuff, then you should be okay. But if you like me, I was planning to go vote first. The first election that came up, the first place I was going was to the poll site. And I said, you know what? I don't want any witnesses, saying they saw me go vote, they saw me. No. So that was the big reason why I chose to disassociate myself. Those are the kind of factors that need to be weighed to make your decision as to whether to leave or to move or whatever. It's depending on how do you want to live a quasi-JW lifestyle where you're not really doing anything and you're just not going to the meetings. I mean, you have to weigh all of those things out. I knew for sure there was no way that I could go vote and no one not see me. There were just too many witnesses in the area. So I would have been, caught sooner or later.
But even still, when you don't go to the Kingdom Hall, that's like a sign. Especially with all the people fading and stuff today.
Right.
They know that something's up. So you really got to be careful with that too.
Exactly. Yeah, and there are some people who are just eager to snitch. So if you have a landlord or someone or a next door neighbor there that's so close by, they may say, oh my God, I saw Kathy and she was, forget it. And if you don't want all of that in your life, that was what I didn't want. I didn't want phone calls, people knocking on my door. I just didn't want it. So that was the main reason why I wrote the disassociation letter. I didn't want to be bothered. I never went to any judicial meetings, and I was over and out. I was gone.
And then, so how did things work out with your family, your witness family, like your mother? Is she still living?
Well, she passed away in 2008. So,
sorry to hear that.
Yep, thank you. So she passed away, and she I was allowed to say goodbye. My family did contact me and let me know that, listen, she's really sick. You need to get, come and pay your last respects. So that's what I did. I got to talk to her before she died. And we spent about 2 weeks before she died. I visited her in the hospital a couple of times and I got to spend time with her. And so that's another thing that if you're planning to leave, you need to be prepared for. If you have family still in there, whether it's an elderly parent or siblings or whatever, you may or may not get that call. They may decide, well, listen, you left Jehovah, so we're not going to tell you anything. You have to, then you have to decide what is going to be your response to that. Some people, they can't handle it. There are some people that, for me, when I first left, it was tough. But then after I got accustomed to being out of there, and I'm going to say maybe 4 or 5 years, I realized, listen, I'm not going to spin my wheels around this. I can't change them. They're not going to change me. I'm not going to give it any more of my time and energy. I just can't. I have a whole life ahead of me, and I don't want to spend my time with this. But that's something and so even with my siblings, I haven't talked to them in many years. I mean, I was applying for a job, and they were asking me for all of my siblings. It was a federal job. So they were asking me for all of my siblings' names, their contact information, their addresses and everything, and you should have seen me. I was like, good luck with that. I don't know where, I mean, it was terrible, but yeah, that's the kind of dilemmas we face.
I never thought about that because, like when you got to get a security clearance or something.
Exactly, yeah.
They got to go back to your kindergarten teacher and stuff.
Yeah.
And you're talking about all your siblings and you couldn't give them any names?
I mean, I have an oldest brother.
Not names, but addresses.
Right. I mean, I have my brother who happens to be the elder, like I have his contact information, but like the others, it's like they wanted their email addresses, their phone numbers and all this. I don't have any of that stuff.
What did you say to them?
They told on the application, they said, just write in whatever you can, as much information as you know, and just leave it at that. But it was embarrassing. I mean, how do you explain why you don't know where 3-4 of your siblings are? I mean, it's embarrassing.
I would have thought that was kind of weird or something.
Yeah, like what did you, because.
Let me ask you this, did you get the job?
No, I didn't, I didn't apply because what it was is that I would have worked overseas. I said, at least here in the United States, I have friends, I have people I can get on the phone and say, listen, I need your help. I go out of the country, it may seem exciting at first, the benefits, the salary, it was exciting, but then, after everything considered, I said, it's the kind of job where if I took it, nothing could go wrong. I mean, nothing, a natural disaster, car accident, nothing, it was that kind of situation that made me uneasy.
But I just think that, since I've left the organization and talked to people, this is the first time this has come up in conversation where you had to fill out a job application.
Yeah.
And for a security clearance, and then you can't, tell them where your siblings live.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that's come up, and I've heard this with Scientology former members, they want to go to college. So of course the parents are supposed to provide their financial information. And those parents tell them, no, I'm not going to give it to you. So you're trying to enroll in college and meantime your parents is telling you, no, I'm not going to do it. So that's the kind of thing that's what I say. If you're already in the organization and you're planning to leave, get all those things lined up now. Go to the college and find out, hey, listen, if I wanted to apply, my parents won't give me their financial information. What do I do? How do I go about this? And I'm sure they'll accept the application even if the parent doesn't provide the information. But you want to get all your ducks in a row early. You don't want to wait until you're already out of the organization and you're trying to piece everything together.
Okay.
Right, and so ladies, see what I can do is I can provide like a checklist for people that are still in who are considering leaving, a checklist for them of stuff that they should keep in mind, stuff they can do. It'll help them in their exit strategy because again, I left abruptly and it was a crash landing. I had to hit the ground running. And so if you can really pace yourself and say, okay, I've got everything in place, it'll make transitioning into the world a lot easier. The other problem for me was that my mom and everyone around me, they kept telling us, oh, worldly people are awful. They're bad people. They're evil. And I didn't even know if I could trust them. I was literally afraid. So if you could start making friends before you leave and get accustomed to being around worldly people, that fear of they're going to harm you will dissipate without you even having to, feel like you're going to be threatened and all of this. You just get to spend time with them while you're still a JW, and you can see for yourself they're not as bad as what people would have you think, Well,
I always had contact with my non-witness relatives, and so I wasn't really afraid to be around, non-witnesses, but that was family. And then when I worked my job, it was like, oh, okay, I know these people on my job, but then it was kind of iffy dealing with them.
Right. Yeah.
And you didn't really feel comfortable going to their house and stuff. So I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. And it takes a while for that awkwardness to move, to leave, but it happens. And especially like with you, I mean, at least you still had contact with your non-JW relatives. I had to go find them. I had to go seek out, my relatives that were still alive, non-JW, and establish, these are people I hadn't seen in years. So it was very awkward for me. And that's why that shunning, I'm completely against it. I really have no respect for that policy at all.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
It is.
What about your non-Jehovah's Witness family? How did they receive you?
Well, of course, they were like leery about it. Like, why are you here now? I mean, think about it. If someone shows up out of the blue, they haven't seen you in 10, 15 years, and you just show up, I'm gonna be like, why are you calling me now? What's going on? Because I mean, I'm gonna fear the worst, that you're a drug, you're into drugs or drinking, or you know what I mean? I'm gonna fear the worst, that something's happening and now you're looking, to mooch off of me, or you know what I mean? And so that was the common concern. Like, wait a minute, and the bad thing about it is, the whole time we weren't keeping in contact with them, I never pushed for it. I never said, hey, Mom, I never questioned it. I just went along. They said, don't stick. Mom says, we're not going to really be in contact with these people. That was the end of it. I never questioned it. And so. Oh,
okay. So then your family's thinking, oh, you're here for money.
Yeah.
But did you tell them why you were trying to seek them out now?
Yeah. I mean, I told them I'm no longer a Jehovah's Witness. And for them, that was like, well, that's too bad, so sad. But now, we're not. Again, this is someone that they haven't been in contact with me for years. So how do they know I'm not lying? How do they know I'm not trying to scam them out of something? How do they, they have no idea. They have no way of knowing.
Yeah, because we had a different experience with our non-Jehovah's Witness family, especially on JT's side of the family, where they said they had been praying for us. But here's the thing. We still had some contact with them.
Yeah. See, as long as you maintain some type of contact, they're usually pretty open. But my mom was so vigilant and so, rigid that this is the truth. And if the elders said, don't, have contact, then we're not going to do it. It's like, it was the kind of thing where it's like we had no control over who the contact, the people we were allowed to have contact with. And so by shutting you off and keeping you only inside the organization, it works in Watchtower's favor, but no one else's. And so like my whole family is just splintered off. We're not as connected as we should be.
Wow.
Yeah, because
so then that means that based on what you're saying, you need to let your non-Jehovah's Witness family members know that you're getting ready to leave or you're trying to leave and you need some assistance.
Yeah, especially that's right. Let them at least tell them you would like emotional support. If they're leery about, well, I don't know if I want to give you money, I don't know. Okay, that's fine, but it's understandable. But at least be there emotionally, so that the person doesn't feel like they're just abandoned and isolated. But that's how it was in my family. When I left, a lot of people were like, I don't know what she's over here for now. What's going on? Why did she leave? And then that was the other thing that kept coming up, because, like I said, they think that you've done something criminal or you're up to no good.
Wow. Let me ask you this then. Did those non-Jehovah's Witness family members, did they live in New York City as well, or do they live in other states, or where do they live?
So some live here in New York, and others live like nearby. One was in Connecticut, the others are Michigan. So then, they're spread out. Texas, Williamsburg, Virginia. So they're spread out. So like you see, I hunted them all down. Good
for you.
California, I hunted them all down. So I know where they are. But I tell you, when I first left, it's like, wait a minute, who's this again?
Well, then how's your relationship with them now?
It's better, much better. I mean, I stay in contact with them. I have a cousin in Michigan and I go visit them from time to time. So it's nice. So it's much better. So it feels good just to be able to talk to them now.
I'm glad that you kept trying to reach them.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you have any other things that you want to share with our listening audience?
So another thing that I would like to share with the audience is that I've heard people say they have guilt about like celebrating the holidays. I've heard people say, oh, a hurricane came through or earthquake happened, and so now I'm scared about Armageddon. And that cult put so much fear and shame and guilt and all of these needless negative emotions in us for no reason. And so my last piece of advice is please just go enjoy your life. Don't be afraid of Armageddon. Please don't be afraid of dying. Don't be afraid of what's going to happen if I celebrate Christmas. And I mean, just go live your life. All those things, don't worry about any of them. And for me, that was one of the most liberating moments that's when I knew I was finally free of them, is that I could do all of that stuff without worrying and guessing and what are they going to think and what are they going to say and what are they, it's rubbish. Just go live. Don't worry about what they're thinking and what they're going to say. Just enjoy life because there's so much stuff to do. And if you just sit there and you're worrying about that old cult and your old belief system and Armageddon and all this other, you're just going to miss out on so much good stuff. There's so many, and keep in mind, I lost my mom, my siblings. So, you know what I mean? But life goes on. And if you just let them pull you back and pull you in sorrow and, oh my God, I lost this, I lost that, it's just bad enough to just stay in the cult. So you really got to just put forth an effort and just grit your teeth and move forward. Don't worry about Armageddon. Don't worry about, Christmas. Just do it. All the things that you wanted to do when you could, when you were a Jehovah's Witness and you couldn't do it, go do all that stuff. All of it. That's one of the things that I've been working on. That's one of the things the therapist told me to do. She said, I'm sure being a Jehovah's Witness, you had a lot of things that you couldn't do. Mm-hmm. Why don't you go do those things that you've always wanted to? And that's
good advice.
That really helped because then it gave me something to look forward to. I had this long bucket list of stuff. I mean, voting was at the top of it, but there was all this other stuff I wanted to do. Christmas. So she was right, though.
There you go.
Yeah.
Make a bucket list. I got about 50 things on mine.
Yeah.
That'll be another video, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You look like a person that's been, reborn. Like you really have gotten yourself together.
It feels that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of work to get to that point. And so keep in mind, this is me. I've been out now, I'm going to say 23 years. So it takes a lot of time. It takes effort. It takes willpower. You have to want it. And I promise if you work towards it, it's achievable. It can be done.
Where are you at in your life now? What's your life like?
So now I'm pretty happy. What I do now is I try to find social issues and political issues too, that matter to me, and then see if we can solve problems. And so for me, a lot of people go through what I see happening is they try to start with, political representatives in Congress and this and that. And I like to look at problems and say, well, listen, can we address this from consumers, just from private citizens? What can we do to affect change? Is there any, do we need to go through a congressperson or a congressional representative, or can we just, solve this, from just by what we do? I'll give you an example. If Walmart is selling, the AK-15 rifles or whatever, and we're against gun violence or whatever, can we just say, listen, we're going to ban Walmart until they get those guns off the shelf? So without involving a congressperson or, whatever, we've just solved the problem. We've told Walmart, we need you to do X, Y, Z. So that's how I look at problem solving. I try to see what is it that we as individuals can do, as consumers, just what can we do to bring about change? Because
you belong to an organization?
No, this has been my approach to problem solving for so long, even growing up with my mom. It's like, I didn't want to go to the elders with her, right? So I had to figure out my way how am I going to get her to let me do what I want to do without it turning into a meeting with the elders and prayer and the Bible and all this stuff? So it's like I was my wheels were constantly spinning with her. I mean, that's how it. I mean, I understand she wanted us all to stay in the truth and all this stuff, but it was impossible. So it's like,
and even after 20-something years, you're still calling it the truth.
Yeah, but you know what? That's what she called it. And you know what? The funniest thing yesterday, there was, Crisis of Conscience, a new edition is available, right? So I was on Amazon trying to find this new revised edition of the book. And they were selling Jehovah's Witness literature. So the book that my mom studied, The Truth That Leads to Eternal Life, that blue little book, they were selling it on Amazon. I saw it just yesterday and I almost freaked out.
Oh my God. Yeah, people are selling all those old publications.
Yeah. The Aid book I saw, the Revelation book, I saw all these different books. And I'm like, oh my God, they must be having a yard sale or something.
That's funny. That is funny.
Oh my God.
So yeah. So anyway, you got any closing comments that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. One last thought is, I know when I left, there are some people who do this. They research the doctrines to make sure that it is a cult and blah, blah, blah. And they want to, and some people I don't want to go near any of that stuff right now. They're so, exhausted and overwhelmed and emotionally drained that they don't want to go. So do whatever feels right for you. If you don't want to look at any of that literature, and that was me. When I left, I threw out all my literature immediately. I did not go near a Watchtower, nothing. If seeing all that stuff makes you upset, don't go near it. Don't feel like you have to research anything. Don't question it, whether, what if they're right? Don't do any of that stuff. If you need to leave, just leave. And if you need to go back and you want to check years later, I left in 1995. I didn't start looking back at all their literature again until 2017. That's as close. That's so many years passed before I felt ready to even safely look at all that stuff again without even getting upset. So,
well, how do you think your life would have changed if you would have had this knowledge that you have now 17 years ago?
I think if anything, I would have tried to help other witnesses who question about coming out. I would have tried to be a resource for them. I think about the suicide rate amongst ex-Jehovah's Witnesses is climbing. And so that's something else we need to try to address as a group. What can we do for these, persons that are feeling suicidal? Can we get them resources so that they don't feel so isolated and overwhelmed? A large part of it is the shunning. And so if we could address that and give them resources to overcoming that would help. I think that's the biggest that's the biggest hurdle we need to jump.
So then basically you're saying that if they don't do anything else when they leave, they may not go get watchtowers and awakes, but Crisis of Conscience should be on the top of the list.
Yeah, and especially since it's been revised, I'm looking forward to reading it now. They've added some new material in there, and I want to check it out.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So Pat, thank you so much for being on The Critical Thought, and we appreciate your tips and sharing your own personal story and how you exited the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society.
Thank you so much, Lady C. It was such a pleasure talking with you.
If you've been in the struggle and want to appear as a guest on our show, email us at info@criticalthinker101.com. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of critical thinkers.
Hey, Jay the Comedian here. Did you enjoy that video? Would you like to see more content like it? Then you gotta subscribe. And it'd really be a big help to JT and Lady C if you like the video and leave a comment. Make sure you hit this little notification bell right here. That way you'll know when another video gets posted. I really hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next video.